Inheritance tax. If you think farmers should just pay their tax, hear me out. This isn't something you can get across in a quick soundbitey TikTok. I want to help educate a deliberately misled public here. So if this video helps even one person outside of farming change their mind, it'll be a success in my view. And if you come away after watching this with a different perspective than you had before, please say in the comments, and I'm going to try and explain it as well as I can. I was in London a few days ago at the protest, and I spent quite a lot of time live streaming, and some of the comments were very, very anti-farming. Pay your tax, like everyone else, must have been said 100 times. Even about 5 minutes ago, I just got another comment in on something else. Pay your effing tax. If you're one of those people, hear this out to the end to see how this affects you too, because it will affect everyone. Let me make this absolutely clear from the start. What this government is proposing is not an inheritance tax, it is a double tax. It is a triple tax and an endless cycle of taxation on the same land, generation after generation. Farmers are not tax-free, like apparently a lot of people assume. Like everyone else, we pay tax on every penny that we earn. But what's being proposed now, removing agricultural property relief, making farmers pay 20% inheritance tax on their land, this will destroy family farms, and with them it'll destroy the UK's food security. This tax won't just hit once, every generation will have to pay it again and again and again, and eventually no one will be able to afford to keep farming, and that is exactly the plan. The average person hears farmer and thinks rich landowner. That's because farming requires land, and land is valuable, but land isn't money. You can't pay tax bills with acres of grass or acres of crops or whatever you've got. Farmers are asset rich, generally, yes, but cash poor. We own land, we own machinery, we own livestock, but a lot of people barely turn a profit. In many years you break even, and as many years you make a loss. If you tax farmland at 20% every time it's passed from one generation to the next, how is the next generation meant to pay for it? They can't pay in cash because there is none, and they can't pay with profits because most farmers don't generate enough. The only option is to sell the land, and that's exactly what this Labour government wants. Take a step back and ask yourself, why did agricultural property relief exist in the first place? It was introduced because food security is national security. After the World Wars, Britain realised that if we couldn't produce enough food, we were vulnerable. We had to secure our own ability to feed our own people. The UK made a strategic decision: keep farming viable, keep land in the hands of farmers, and prevent mass corporate buyouts on productive agricultural land. And that logic hasn't changed. If anything, it's more relevant today than ever before. Just look at the global instability we have at the present minute. Wars, potential war across every theatre in the world. Do we really want to be 100% dependent on foreign imported food? Because that's where this will lead, that's where this is heading. The government claims this tax will stop corporate investors from buying up land. That is a farcical lie. The normal inheritance tax rate is 40%, and farmers are being asked to pay 20%, and they're making that out as if they're great boys for making us only pay 20%. But for corporate investors, 20% is still tax efficient investment. They still save 20%. So they're still going to buy the land. This won't stop the corporations from buying land. It will only force family farmers to sell land. The end result will be fewer independent farmers, more corporate ownership, and less control over our food production. The government says farmers can pay tax over 10 years. Again, thanks. That's really good of you. It's 10% per year. Let's break that down, right? Farmland in the UK is worth anywhere from 10 grand an acre to 40 grand an acre, and in some places even more. Take a 200 acre farm valued at 30,000 acre, which is relatively typical of the area that I'm from. That's 6 million of value on the land alone before you take any of the assets that go along with the farm. You'll be taxing 5 million of that. At 20%, that's £1 million of tax. That means 100,000 per year over 10 years. Here's the problem: most farms that size don't make anywhere close to 100,000 a year in profit. Some years farmers make a decent profit, other years they break even, and as many years they make a loss. And don't forget to have to live and feed their families out of this profit. It's impossible to pay this tax. So where is the money going to come from? The only option is going to be to sell the land. And when you start selling the land, your farm becomes smaller, less viable, less efficient, and eventually it will collapse, cease to exist. How many comments have I read as well about big rich farmers with big machinery and big shiny tractors? This is the kit that we need to get the jobs done, to put food on people's tables. If we didn't need them, why would we have them? Like, we don't have them for fun. I never hear any members of the public say, oh, I don't know, big rich builders with their big cranes or their big bulldozers or their big diggers. People look at that industry for what it is, big kit for big jobs. Let me address something else. The media and politicians love to blame Brexit for everything. They want you to believe that the UK is in economic trouble because of Brexit. They want you to think that higher taxes and inflation and policies like this inheritance tax are somehow the fault of leaving the EU, and that is another farcical lie. Britain is not poor because of Brexit. Britain is struggling because of institutionalised government corruption, reckless spending and complete mismanagement. Look at the facts. This government and previous governments waste billions on failed projects, just inefficient spending, corruption, scandals. The NHS is one of the most expensive healthcare systems in the world, and it is basically collapsing. Stupid projects, stupid nonsense projects go over budget by billions while essential services are cut. I mean, you can hardly drive down the road at the minute. It's madness. That's why the country is struggling. It's not struggling because of Brexit. And to be clear about something else, and there's a lot of documentation about this, look into it for yourself. There's a lot of examples that doesn't make the mainstream news because the mainstream news is very much left-wing controlled. Most of the economic issues caused by Brexit are not because of Brexit itself, but because of how it has been deliberately sabotaged by politicians who never wanted it in the first place. From the moment the referendum was won, government since has treated Brexit like a burden instead of an opportunity. Trade deals were negotiated poorly on purpose, and opportunities for regulatory freedom were ignored. The EU was given every advantage while Britain was left with red tape. If Brexit had been implemented properly by a government that actually believed in it, Britain could have been a thriving, independent powerhouse. Instead, we got weak leadership and sabotage. All the comments, back to the comments again, all Nigel Farage's fault. This is not Nigel Farage's fault. Nigel Farage lobbied for Brexit. He had nothing to do with the implementation of Brexit, and that's very unfortunate for us, because if he had, we'd probably be a lot better off. And it's not the fault of Brexit voters. It is the fault of the political class who never accepted the will of the people. This tax is an attack on British farmers, on food security and on the future of the country. And I don't blame the public who are leaving these comments on all of our fellow farmers' videos. You have been deliberately misled by the government through bought news sources like the BBC. And if you don't believe that this government is corrupt, just look at England at the minute. They've cancelled the upcoming council elections because Labour knows how deeply unpopular its MPs have become since taking power. They lied and lied and lied on the way to the election. Once they get in, they basically did the opposite of everything they said they were going to do when they were campaigning. And that's not opinion. It's been very well documented and exposed. I'm making my best effort to convince you to change sides. Support the custodians of the countryside and the people who work tirelessly to put food on your plate every single day. I want to help expose these government lies, and if this video even helps one person change their mind, as I said, it'll be a success. This isn't about stopping the rich from avoiding tax, it's about destroying independent farming and handing control of our food to corporations and foreigners. At the same time, they want to distract you blaming Brexit while they rob the country blind through waste and corruption. Once our farms are gone, they're gone forever. So if you care about food security, national security, or the future of British farming, please share this message. If you care about the economy and jobs, consider this. How many jobs will die if agriculture dies? Not just farm employees, food processors, haulage, merchant, vets, engineering businesses, agronomists, the breeding industry, auctioneers, mills, butchers, brewers, bakers, many factories, labs, making products for farmers and their animals. The list is endless, it just goes on and on and on. And how much do these businesses generate in taxes? How many people are employed? It's colossal. Without the farmers, there isn't just no food. Millions of jobs across the UK rely on agriculture. The whole economy is built from the ground up through farming. So if you care about your family and your children and your future in Great Britain and Northern Ireland, please think strongly about your position. Educate yourself fully before you blast farmers on social media about being tax dodgers, because if this tax goes through, the consequences will be colossal for everybody, not just for farmers.